Welcome to Business Decoded, where we break down how companies really make money. Let's decode today's business model. Microsoft was dying. In 2014, they were a Windows-centric dinosaur watching the world move to mobile and cloud. Apple owned mobile, Google owned search, Amazon owned cloud, Microsoft owned nothing that mattered. Their stock was flat for a decade. Developers hated them. Wall Street had written them off. Then Satya Nadella became CEO and made one bet that saved the company: cloud first, mobile first. Today, Microsoft is worth $3 trillion. This is how they pulled off one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in tech history. Today, we're breaking down how Microsoft went from Windows-centric dinosaur to cloud powerhouse, why abandoning Windows dominance was the only path to survival, and how Azure became the second most valuable cloud platform. Here's what we're covering. Why Microsoft was dying under Windows-first strategy, the cloud-first transformation that saved the company, and what threats could derail this comeback. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This content is for educational purposes only, not business or legal advice. Company references are from public sources for educational commentary. Trademarks belong to their owners. Consult qualified professionals before making business decisions. Let's start with why Microsoft was dying. In 2014, Microsoft was a Windows company. Windows was 80% of their business. Every product decision optimized for Windows. Office only ran on Windows. Everything pointed back to Windows. This made sense when Windows had 95% market share. But the world was changing. Mobile happened. Smartphones became the primary computing device for billions. Apple's iPhone and Google's Android dominated. Microsoft tried Windows Phone. It failed. By 2014, Windows Phone had less than 3% market share. Microsoft missed mobile entirely. Cloud happened. Amazon launched AWS in 2006 and owned cloud computing. By 2014, AWS was a multi-billion-dollar business growing at 50% annually. Microsoft had cloud products, but they were clunky and Windows-dependent. Enterprises were moving to AWS. Developers abandoned Microsoft. The cool kids were building on iOS, Android, AWS, and open source. Microsoft was closed, proprietary, and expensive. Stack Overflow surveys showed developers hated working with Microsoft technologies. Wall Street had given up. Microsoft stock traded at $30 in 2014, the same price as 2000. A decade of zero returns while Apple, Google, and Amazon soared. Investors believed Microsoft's best days were behind them. Then Satya Nadella became CEO in February 2014. His first email to employees said, "Mobile first, cloud first." This was heresy. Microsoft was a Windows company. Mobile first, cloud first meant Windows was no longer the priority. It meant Microsoft products would run on iOS and Android. It meant embracing competitors' platforms. It meant abandoning the strategy that built Microsoft. But Nadella understood. Windows was dying. Not immediately, but inevitably. The future was mobile and cloud. If Microsoft stayed Windows first, they'd become irrelevant. The only path to survival was becoming a cloud company. This required killing the old Microsoft and building a new one. The transformation had three parts. First, make everything cross-platform. Office had to run on iOS and Android, not just Windows. This was controversial. Why help competitors? Because users were on iOS and Android whether Microsoft liked it or not. If Office didn't work on those platforms, users would switch to Google Docs. Second, embrace open source. Microsoft had called Linux a cancer. Nadella made Microsoft the biggest contributor to open source projects. Microsoft open-sourced .NET. They built tools for Linux. They acquired GitHub for $7.5 billion. This signaled to developers, we're not the enemy anymore. Third, go all in on cloud. Microsoft had Azure, but it was a side project. Nadella made it the top priority. He moved the best engineers to Azure. He invested tens of billions in data centers. He priced Azure aggressively to steal share from AWS. The cloud transformation worked because Microsoft had one advantage AWS didn't: enterprise relationships. Microsoft sold Windows and Office to every Fortune 500 company. They had decades of trust, contracts, and integration. When Microsoft told enterprises, move to Azure, we'll make it seamless with your existing Microsoft stack, enterprises listened. AWS was better technically. AWS had more services, better reliability, more experience. But AWS didn't have Office. AWS didn't have Active Directory. AWS didn't have decades of enterprise sales relationships. Microsoft leveraged these to convince customers to choose Azure over AWS, even when AWS was superior. Microsoft also bundled aggressively. Buy Office 365 and get Azure credits. Use Azure and get discounts on Windows Server licenses. Microsoft made it financially attractive to go all in on their ecosystem. AWS couldn't match this because AWS didn't have Office or Windows to bundle. The numbers prove it worked. In 2014, Microsoft's market cap was $300 billion. In 2026, it's $3 trillion. 10 times return in 12 years. Revenue grew from $86 billion to over $250 billion. Operating income grew from $27 billion to over $110 billion. Azure became the second largest cloud platform. AWS leads with 31% market share, but Azure has 25% and growing faster. In fiscal 2025, Microsoft's Intelligent Cloud segment generated $96 billion in revenue. Azure's revenue growth rate is still 30% annually, faster than AWS. But Microsoft isn't just a cloud company. They're diversified. Cloud is huge, but Office 365 generates massive recurring revenue. LinkedIn generates $10 billion per year. Xbox and gaming generate $15 billion. Windows still generates revenue from licensing. This diversification is Microsoft's advantage over pure cloud players. Oz is Amazon's profit engine, but if AWS growth slows, Amazon's in trouble because retail doesn't make money. Microsoft can afford slower Azure growth because they have Office, LinkedIn, Xbox, and Windows to fall back on. The AI bet is Microsoft's next big play. In 2023, Microsoft invested $10 billion in OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. They integrated ChatGPT into Bing, Office, and Azure. They're selling AI tools to enterprises through Azure OpenAI service. This positions Microsoft as the leader in enterprise AI. But there are risks. First, AWS isn't going away. Amazon is fighting hard to maintain cloud dominance. They're investing heavily in AI, price cuts, and new services. If AWS successfully defends their lead, Azure's growth could stall. Second, Google Cloud is improving. Google is third in cloud but growing fast. They have advantages in AI and machine learning from search and YouTube experience. If Google becomes the AI cloud leader, Microsoft's AI advantage disappears. Third, enterprise spending could slow. If the economy weakens or IT budgets get cut, cloud spending slows. Microsoft's growth depends on enterprises continuing to migrate to cloud and adopt AI. Fourth, the OpenAI partnership could backfire. Microsoft doesn't own OpenAI. They invested heavily, but if OpenAI pivots or competitors catch up in AI, Microsoft's advantage evaporates. The bull case is Microsoft continues dominating enterprise cloud and AI. Azure keeps taking share. Office 365 subscriptions keep growing. AI tools become essential, and Microsoft is the enterprise provider. The bear case is growth slows. Azure can't displace AWS. Google Cloud takes share in AI. Enterprise spending contracts. They're a mature, slow growth company again. For you, Microsoft's transformation is a lesson in corporate reinvention. They were dying and chose to kill their core business before competitors did. They went from Windows first to cloud first, from closed to open source, from hated to respected. It worked because they executed flawlessly and had enterprise relationships to leverage. But transformations are fragile. Microsoft has to keep executing. They can't get complacent. They can't fall back into Windows-centric thinking. They have to keep investing in cloud and AI. Here's what to do. If you're invested in Microsoft, understand you're betting on continued cloud and AI growth. Watch Azure's growth rate. If it drops below 20%, that's a warning sign. If you're a business choosing cloud providers, Microsoft makes sense if you're already in their ecosystem. Azure integrates better with Office and Windows. But don't get locked in without alternatives. Now, next time on Business Decoded, we're examining Meta's business model. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all free. But Meta makes over $130 billion per year. How do they turn your social life into the most profitable advertising platform after Google? Microsoft was dying. Windows' first strategy led to irrelevance. Then Satya Nadella made one bet: cloud first, mobile first. He killed the old Microsoft and built a new one. Azure became the second most valuable cloud platform. Office went cross-platform. Microsoft embraced open source. The stock went from $300 billion to $3 trillion. This is how you save a dying company. Kill what made you successful before someone else does. And that's how they built it. If this helped you understand business better, subscribe for weekly deep dives into the world's most successful companies. Thanks for watching.